Hey, Status Steve, please like and subscribe. Please click on the Deck Heroes icon, click on subscribe. It's 100% free. Blood in, blood out. And don't forget to click on the notifications just so you don't miss any amazing content. This is a very important video. Why single men are happier than you think. Basically, it's important because I do a lot of videos, and where I'm coming from is all about take charge mentality. But I know there's a lot of guys who right now at a stage in their life where it's like, well, I'm taking charge by deciding to kind of isolate self, for want of better words, or remain single is a nice way to put it. The gentleman in the top left-hand corner. I say this video kind of probably summarize it as good as what I've seen. So that's why I'm going to play it anyway. Let's go.
Single men are much happier than most people think. In fact, being single is such a relief for most men once they release themselves from that cultural paradigm that they need to have a woman in their life in order to be considered relatively happy. Well, the truth could not be further from the paradigm that we're living in. Men are much happier on their own without a woman in their lives, especially these days. Men right now, even approaching a woman, is a very risky proposition. There's a relatively good chance that whatever you do is going to result in you either being canceled or turned into somebody's TikTok meme or being accused of being a creep or a predator. So why even bother? I mean, there's just way too much risk and way too little reward for most men to justify getting into a serious relationship with a woman. I would suggest that not only is it a bad idea for men to do this, but I think that men will ultimately be way happier on their own when they find their own path and they let go of this idea that they need to have a woman in their lives. Women are much more trouble than they're worth. Now, if you're a man and you're married and you've got a woman in your life, I hope it works out for you. But for those of you who have not found a woman and you feel like you need to, I want to offer this to you as an opportunity to give life a different thought, have a different perspective. Consider the possibility that not having a woman in your life is a blessing, and the opportunity for happiness for you is just as great or greater than any married man could be. So let's talk about it. We all get one life to live, and finding happiness is elusive enough as it is. But when men are facing bigotry from women that is endorsed and accepted by society as a whole, it makes it even more difficult. And so endeavoring to build relationships with women for many men is becoming less and less of an option. Men going their own way is just the natural order of things. And there's an enormous amount of fulfillment and opportunity for men out there on their own. And in fact, in many ways, women are a hindrance to men's happiness. It's our belief and idea that we need to have a woman in our life that has been the historical norm and the paradigm that we have been living under for such a long time, that breaking free of that paradigm and exploring our happiness and our independence and our ability to find meaning in our lives without the burden of having to care for a woman is just a great opportunity. So don't feel for a moment that you're not complete as a man just because you're not married or you don't have a full-time woman in your life. Because women are just one thing. They're just one option. And for those of you guys who are happily married, good for you, good on you. But if anyone who has been married for any length of time knows, it's not an easy track. I mean, it's a very, very difficult task. Being in a long-term relationship with a woman, they're very difficult to manage. They're extremely emotional. They're extremely irrational. And they're very simple and straightforward in their needs and their desires, and they communicate it to you directly. Women are not like that. And so having relationships with them can be extremely difficult. So today we're going to talk about how men find happiness on their own without a woman in their lives.
All right, before we get in that, we're going to have a very, very quick summary. So you've got this cultural expectation that you need women, that men need women to be happy, that expectation. But basically you're saying that in trying to make that happen, that you got certain issues. Some of those are kind of like you got risk of being cancelled, being called a creep. So, why bother? The thing I kind of counterbalance that with, we're talking about very kind of niche reasons, if it's so basically, if it's not a completely smooth road, and if everybody isn't absolutely kind of up for it, hands in the air saying like, will you chat me up? Is that what we're talking about? Because not everybody's going to be into everybody, and not everybody's going to be good people to chat up. So you just kind of filter better. He did talk about bigotry from some ladies. I think he's talking about this kind of rise of modern feminism. Traditional feminism is about kind of equality. I don't think any man has got a problem with that. I really don't, apart from the niche. But the modern feminism, a slightly different twist on it. So that might be where he's coming from. That But then he talked about the natural order of things to be isolated. It's not the natural order of things. For example, men are sexually driven. That's it, right? The world turns. This is why we got a kind of population going forwards. You know what I mean? And we don't just kind of go extinct. It's not the natural order of anything. We can survive within in our own isolation, or we can choose isolation. That's absolutely natural, and that's fine. But it's not the natural order of things, though. The natural order of things is to be in a unit. Well, kids definitely, maybe wife, in terms of Western cultural perspective, in which is what he was talking. You know what I mean? But yeah, we are saying you can still be complete and single. Listen, ultimately, you can still be satisfied. I think there's a happiness level, and there's a general kind of satisfied with life level, which is not bad at all if you're single. And we all go through periods of being satisfied. You know what I mean? There's no real issues, and be single. So fair enough. What I would say is, don't forget also, I'm kind of stuck on this thing. Don't forget you've got your passport. You do those kind of passport videos. I've got a few of those. It sounds like they're, I say, tired of the bigotry, what he mentioned, and this modern feminist perspective from too many ladies. He might need to get his passport and go out to the Far East or somewhere else where you can find the types of ladies that you're looking for. I don't think we need to go that extreme. I think if you keep on looking, if you keep on looking in the same places, you get the same results. So if you're quite fond of living in a given town, look where he's living. Absolutely amazing. He can walk his dogs. It's a great place to live. Maybe it's a little bit too rural to meet somebody. I'm just putting it out there because I'm a city dweller. I live in London, which is an absolutely amazing, bustling city. I love living here. It's as simple as that. Um, but so yeah, so you've got to take positives as a man. You've got to prioritize what matters most. So if kind of further in your line, if being in a happy kind of relationship with somebody isn't the top priority, then you may prioritize isolation and live with it. You know what I mean? If you're quite fond of, yeah, I've worked very hard in order to achieve these things. I'm in a career in a particular company, and maybe I can't relocate. Maybe I won't even bother asking, or maybe I just can't. Maybe my skills are not transferable. Basically, what I'm saying is, those are the excuses. If you prioritize that, if your life depended on doing everything necessary so you could find somebody, then you would do it. But it's not a question of your life depending on it, isn't it? It's a question of choice. And effectively, people quite satisfied to be isolated and single. Absolutely fine. Anyway, let's go forwards.
Society has a tendency to view men who are single as unfulfilled or lonely or incapable of having a full, meaningful life. And nothing could be further from the truth. In a society that has promoted women to the point where it's okay for them to say things like, all men should die, and men are useless, and we don't need men anymore, and these kinds of bigoted statements without holding them accountable. If I said something like that about any ethnic group, if I said that about women or transgenders or Jews or Catholics or Muslims, I would be called out as a bigot, as a racist, as a misogynist. But women can get away with this shit like they're immune to society's standards. They can say evil, mean things about men without being held accountable. And so it's very clear from that perspective and from the perspective of family court that women are getting most favored person treatment in the world right now. And in a marketplace between men and women, where it's very important that the dynamics at least have some kind of rules that everyone can play by and agree to, and women live outside of those rules, well, why would men want to enter into any kind of a long-term relationship with them? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense at all.
Okay, you took a pause. You took a pause. He's going more into more detail about the kind of the bigotry. I think he mentioned something, yeah, about all men just don't even need to exist. You know what I mean? And I think what I agree with, I think what anybody would agree with, is that toxicity. So the whatever element are kind of echoing that sentiment. He said women. I know we've got to generalize because we haven't got infinite time. He's not talking about women as in 100%. He's talking about a particular segment which he's never going to be interested in. And guess what? He's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. And is there a broader, just go beyond that for just for quickly for a second, is there a broader problem in that if they've got this, this acceptance or this allowance for this negative toxicity, this kind of feminine toxicity to continue and permeate, where we can't say it as men, and they can say it, and then it becomes normalized. And because it's more normalized, it becomes more common, and it just kind of, well, actually, that the percentage of women I can actually talk to in a positive sense, you know what I mean? Have these positive relationships with is getting smaller and smaller, and almost seems impossible, especially if you're in a rural area where it's always going to be a numbers game. But to be honest, it's more problematic for them. That's the irony of the situation. It's more problematic for ladies because they're against the body clock. So all this time they're taking being, I'm not talking about everybody again from what I just said a minute ago before anybody puts it in the comments. The time taken being toxic is just taking up those valuable days, months, years from a big enough portion of ladies that they're never going to get back. And whilst they're kind of excluding themselves from the dating market, because surely not any man's going to be crazy to take that on board. Why would any man take toxicity on board? They may well end up finding themselves too close to the body clock in order to meet somebody, or past the body clock, and their opportunities sadly are going to be from 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 being difficult to being incredibly more difficult. So yeah, and men his age, my age, much older, especially if we've got something about us in terms of success in various ways and confidence and assurity and social skills, and we will be fine until more or less the day that we leave this earth. So yeah, but anyway, let's go.
Life 1.0 tells us that we need to get married. That's one of the boxes that we need to check in our lives. And I think as men being raised primarily by women, and inevitably, unless you were a helicopter child or you were a single child, you probably didn't get a lot of nurturing from your mother. I certainly didn't. I think that Generation Xers like me, we were not the purpose of our parents' lives. Oftentimes we felt like we were an impediment to their lives. So seeking out a woman's comfort is something that I think our generation really sought out, or that's something that we did. And I think even the boomers before us had a lot of the same experience. If I had known, 25, 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago, what I know now, I certainly wouldn't have been so eager to get married. And we all have our different reasons at different times. And at the time when I got married, I was a single father. So finding someone who could play that maternal role for my son was a high priority. But in retrospect, it was a mistake, I think that my life probably would have been just as happy or much happier, and certainly a lot more financially rewarding if I had remained single. Well, you never know. Life happens. But I guess my point is, don't feel like getting married is something that is critical to your life. There's so much more to life than marriage and raising children. There's lots of ways to find fulfillment. Don't get stuck in the paradigm.
Okay, so he's just taking another breather there. So yeah, you mentioned that he was raised by a mother that he didn't find that was that nurturing. It's kind of like a deep thought. That's kind of like one of those things I mull over as I listen to more. He wished he wasn't as eager to get married, and maybe that was a mistake, and maybe you'd be happier if he was single, and maybe even happy if he didn't have the kids as well. You'll definitely be financially better off. That's probably something to do with the legal system. I don't know if he's in the States or Canada or whatever, but they think things are no good for men anywhere when it comes to divorce. And everything that you've worked for, somebody who just came about at some stage in your life and can just take half. Ridiculous. And it is the system that it is. And yeah, if you don't sign that contract, which a marriage is that actual contract, which ultimately kind of makes your assets also hers, and she has no shame that she won't turn it down when you've got nothing else going on. If you're living together, fair enough. You can enjoy the fruits of both what you had to give to things. More often though, it's usually the man. Men will usually be the older person, and they bring along a woman, and I say She moves into whatever he's established more often than not, and it doesn't happen in reverse because women of a higher status will not usually respect a man of a lower status to allow them to be in a relationship. I'm not talking about everybody. I'm just talking about the majority. So yes, men will generally lose out should a marriage fail. That's true, but that doesn't not but that does not necessarily mean that we don't go into marriage, because otherwise no men would ever get married. Knowing that no men would ever get married, and we do, because that's something that we choose and want to do, including him. So if he felt that society brought him to that point, that's also an interesting thing. Because as men, we think for ourselves. Nobody thinks for me. Nobody. We are Western, right? Nobody tells me who I'm going to date. Nobody tells me who I'm going to have a naughty time with. Nobody sends me down the aisle ever, and I don't think it actually happened for him either. So his perspective or his lens on his own life, very interesting, or why he thinks he was forced down that route. We're not. Women have the pressure for the body clock and reasons for that, but men, we don't. So anyway, interesting.
Married and having a family, that's just one option. But because it conforms to societal norms and historical precedent, it's something that men feel obligated to do. The truth of the matter is, it's just a paradigm that has not been challenged in a big way for a very long time. I think that a lot of our ancestors probably figured it out that living with a woman for the rest of your life probably wasn't an ideal solution for most men. The fact of the matter is, our ancestors, our ancient ancestors, spent an awful lot of time away from home. They were hunting and they'd be gone for weeks at a time on hunting trips, finding new places to live, just going out and exploring the world. Staying at home and being a father and a husband was not something that most men did a long time ago. Financially, single men do quite well. In fact, there are several studies that show that financially single men are doing much better than their romantically entangled counterparts. Now, granted, there are some benefits if you meet the right girl and she can pull her weight and help buy you a house, but for the most part, single men do much better on their own than having a woman in their lives. Budgeting is made much simpler. Prioritizing needs and desires is much more straightforward. You don't have to worry about someone else's spending habits or their fetish for furniture or whatever it may be.
Listen, I've just got to jump in very quickly now. There's a big difference between being single, isolated, married, and dating. Clearly, you'll save most money if you just choose to be single, but I said we're red blooded men. We are sexually driven, so that's not likely. Not likely. And that's not the kind of demographic that I'm usually talking to. And if you're married, you've crossed a lot of bridges. You know what I mean? You will kind of do things jointly together, but there's not that expectation. You're necessarily going to go Nobu for your dinner, and if you do, it's from household income a lot of the time. But if you're in the middle and you're choosing not to be married, and obviously, as I said before, you don't really want to be single, so you kind of like actively dating, that can be quite expensive. So I think, yeah, the people with most money, single, then married, and right last is going to be the people who are actively dating, because yeah, you have to finance lifestyle to an extent, and if you're trying to chat somebody up, you need to go there with an interesting proposition beyond just words and a walk around the park. And at some point you are going to have to invest something, maybe not Nobu, but something, and because you invest in something, it's something more than the single people. So yeah, but anyway, let's go. Point taken.
You can decide what's important to you and spend your money on it, or you can just stash that money away and save it for a rainy day or a sunny day if you like. But yeah, being financially independent as a single man is much more straightforward and simple than it is when you're married, especially if you're financially going to be caring for this woman and maybe even a few children. Oh my gosh, just look at the cost of putting kids through preschool. Forget about college. My God.
Listen, the one thing I'm taking this point now, I'm going to rewind it just so we don't miss anything. But the one thing I want you to look out for, especially if you're kind of psychology backgrounds or you feel you're good readers of character, this man has got that kind of tormented, not heavily tormented, but got that tormented kind of demeanor about him. You know what I mean? So somebody's worn him down, somebody's been pressurizing him regarding money in particular. And you got to think about yourself in terms of your makeup. You know what I mean? Your kind of mental makeup and how you come across and things like that, and your normal stature, and whether somebody, whoever it is, including a woman, could ever wear you down to that point. or if there's just those kind of barriers. And I'm not blaming him. I'm just reading it. I could get it wrong. But I'm just thinking nobody's ever financially pressured me like that. They tried to pressure me into buying silly kind of bullshit gimmick things like, I ain't gonna go into it. You just gotta say no. You gotta say no, married or not. Nobody can force that money out of your hand. Can you imagine trying to force some woman's money out of her hands, married or not? Not gonna happen. So why would it happen for us, brother? Think about not again. Oh my gosh, you've got to take some accountability, brother. You've got to take some accountability for what you permitted to happen. And you need to reflect on, yeah, actually, I saw this thing coming about. I saw those unreasonable expectations building. I saw this pressure to do things I didn't want to do with my own money. And I allowed it to happen because it couldn't happen without your consent. Blame yourself, my brother. You got to take accountability. Not being harsh. That's just how I'm reading it. Let me know let me know if you're seeing it either way in the comments. And I accept. I've only been watching this for watching him for just about 10 minutes. I don't know who he is. It's just my inferences from it, and just a lesson to self, really, and anybody else who may be useful for. Let's go.
Financially going to be caring for this woman and maybe even a few children. Oh my gosh. Just look at the cost of putting kids through preschool. Forget about college. My God. It costs you a couple $1,000s a month per kid to put them through a preschool program. And then when you get to college, if you got a real smart kid, you could be easily paying $500,000 or $600,000 to get your kid through college. Now imagine how you could use that money on your own. Yes. You start to see the benefits already. It doesn't take a genius to figure this one out.
Just a second, only because he's paused again. Listen, you're taking the royal piss, my friend. You're taking the piss. You're counting the cost of your kids. You're not talking about her kids. It's your damn kids. So if your kids and you choose to put your blood through effective education and schooling, why are you even fucking raising this as an issue, my brother? It's kind of funny, but at the same time, man, you can't be serious. Hopefully, you're not raising this as a serious point. Of course, you're going to pay for your own damn kids. Anyway, let's go forwards, piss taker.
I remember when I was a kid, if I got caught doing something stupid, my typical excuse for that stupidity was, well, everyone else was doing it. And of course, my parents' response to that was the classic, well, if everybody else was jumping off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge? I'm like, shit. Anyway, that applies here and now better than ever. Everybody's getting married. Everybody's jumping off a bridge. Just because they're doing it, does that mean you should do it? Be smarter. Don't feel like you have to get married. You don't have to jump off that bridge. There are lots of other things you could be doing with your time. Money, peace of mind, and all of that stuff. So, just because everybody else is jumping off the bridge doesn't mean you've got to go too. Modern society would have us believe that married men are in better shape, live longer, and are happier. And nothing could be further from the truth. Single guys are much more likely to take care of themselves. They're in much better shape physically. Their health is far better. They have much more time for physical activity. They go to the gym a lot more. And they tend to have better mental health because they are self-sufficient. So they have much greater levels of self-esteem and general happiness in their lives.
I don't know about. Listen, I've got a psychology degree, a very, very good psychology degree. He's about my age as well, so we're talking about life experience. But I think he's being very selective about what he's experienced in terms of mental health. You really think that people living in isolation with just their four walls? Do you think that went well? Remember lockdown during the pandemic? Were we hearing things on the news? Okay, everybody's really doing well in their isolation. I don't think so, my brother. I don't think so, my brother. Again, we can be okay, relatively isolated, absolutely isolated. Solitary confinement in a prison, one of the most strictest punishments they can do. Again, listen, let's not go too freaking far. Listen, we can, of course, as men, we can be self-sufficient. We will look after our careers. We are stronger and fitter than the opposite sex, so we likely do better. But let's not go too flaming far. Anyway, let's go.
Married men, especially men that are unhappily married, which is the vast majority of them, tend to die of heart attacks and strokes and cancer at much higher rates than single men. So if you really want to live a long time and you want to look good and feel great, there's a lot of advantages to being single. I don't know why married men get fat. Maybe they think they're off the market. They don't need to worry about themselves anymore. But generally speaking, married men tend to be in much better married men tend to be in much worse physical condition than their single counterparts. So, single guys, got a lot to look forward to there. Being healthy, strong, mentally fit. Yeah, what could be better? I mean, if you're going to live your life and you want to be happy and healthy, there's a lot of advantages to remaining single.
Just a second. If that's where you lived, and it's obviously got a very so maybe he's driven there. I'm just imagining that's his backyard. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe he's driven there. If that's what you've got as an option, then that's great. But I see a lot of men on these. I watch a lot of YouTube and things like that, obviously, and a lot of guys are just living in cities with their own four walls, you know what I mean? And the message from me to them in terms of their mental health as a psychology person, it doesn't apply to everybody. It's just reach out. In the UK, we've got meetup groups where you can find people who've got similar interests, reach out, and yeah, yeah. Isolation doesn't lead to any really good options, not for everybody, my brother. And people, especially men, are more known to take their lives and things like that. And that's what's on my mind. And I just feel that there's happiness in community more often than not. Not in every single situation. And there's nothing wrong with, just taking yourself out of the limelight. Of course, I grew up as an only child. I understand isolation. Was it like Batman? He lived in the darkness. He says, "Yeah, I am the darkness." That's what I lived in the darkness. I lived in isolation for most of my life. I get it. I get it. Of course, I take time out whenever I need it, but I don't withdraw to the extent of saying, yeah, I'm going to exclude all others, and that is the right way to go. It's no, take a breath until the next time you go out and socialize, and force yourself to go out and socialize if necessary, but go into the more positive spots. We're not looking for the toxicity. You know what I'm trying to say. Don't go backwards in life, go forwards in life. Let's go.
Another study found that single guys are much more likely to prioritize their happiness and fulfillment in life. So they are not being tied down by someone else's needs and desires. They're no longer trying to fulfill someone else's image of what their life should look like. They find fulfillment in prioritizing their own happiness and fulfillment in life. Emotional growth and independence is something that single men prioritize in their lives. They tend to be much more psychologically stable. They have a lot fewer difficulties when it comes to emotional health, psychological health. They tend to prioritize those things in their life. Singles experience much more psychological growth, self-determination. They're much less likely to settle into a relationship out of fear or insecurity. They're much more likely to feel independent, resilient. There's just so many advantages to being single. The overall level of happiness when you're single and you're not worried about someone else's happiness is just unreal. So don't be afraid of embracing a single lifestyle. There are a lot of advantages to it. And just because you're single doesn't mean you're not going to have women in your life. It just means that you're not going to make them your life. That's the difference. Guys who have never been married and remain single through their lives tend to have a lot more friends than their married counterparts. They tend to prioritize these relationships and put a lot of energy into them. That gives them a lot more balance in their life. It gives them a lot more social outlets in their life. They're no longer, compared to their married counterparts who find themselves very isolated in this relationship and dependent on this one other person for all these different needs they have in their life. Single guys are much more balanced socially and emotionally because they have all these friendships. So don't overlook the value of remaining single. There are a lot of advantages to it.
There's no harm in having friendships. Just sort of think, yeah, when you're in your teens, obviously you're just out of school, obviously you're gonna have loads of friends, single or not, you're gonna have loads of friends around you. I guarantee year on year, your friendship circles gonna get smaller and smaller. And ideally, the person that you choose to have a long-term relationship with in terms of marriage and that type of thing should be your new best friend. You know what I mean? That's again why you don't go in there for the wrong reasons. And I think for this guy, the answer is what are those intrinsic qualities that you needed in that woman going back, just looking back yourself, if you had those kind of sliding doors moments, maybe you should have slid that door shut and try to find somebody else basically you're more compatible with. That is what you should be teaching to everybody else, not getting everybody else to double down on some kind of bad advice. That's what I think it is, brother. That's what I think it is. Yeah, let's leave it at that.
I remember when I was a boy hanging out with my friends, and we would talk about what we would do when we grew up. We even thought about running away from home just so we could get there faster, because we really just wanted to grow up, and experience all those benefits, all that freedom of being out from underneath the yoke of a parent. Well, then you grow up and you put yourself under the yoke of a woman. Why would you do that? Really, really. When you think about it, all the fun and adventure that the world has to offer, you're going to trade all of that so you can get married and give all your time, energy, and money to a woman. Now, I have to admit, I love my kids and I love, being a dad, and there's a lot of wonderful things about it. But if that doesn't work out for you, don't sweat it. I mean, really, the world is your oyster. Go out there and do the things that you wanted to do. Don't be afraid. I think fear is what people's most biggest problem is when it comes to this, is men are afraid to get out there and actually see what their potential is. What can they do? What could they do? Yeah, just shed that stuff. Just go out there and do it. You only got this one life. You might as well live it. You might as well have a great time while you're at it.
It just took another pause. Yeah, I think. Listen, I think we actually all agree in as much as, listen, don't get rushed into making a long-term decision or getting into marriage and that kind of thing, right? Like what he did. Don't get rushed into that and think that society wants you to make that mistake. If everything in your brain and in your gut is saying this isn't the person for me, you got to listen to that. But then there's going to be somebody else out there for you, hopefully. And if you never meet anybody who is non-toxic, then fair enough. You've got to be happy in your isolation. Then we all agree. You're comfortable enough not to have to rush into something, so don't. So don't. Just, again, keep refining self. Don't kind of retreat to the corner and be thinking you're happy in your isolation. That's my advice. You can do whatever the hell you want to do, for goodness sake. But my advice is don't retreat in isolation just because you haven't built the skills in order to succeed in a given area. That's not the male winner mentality that I'm talking about. You know what I mean? There's going to be lots of other videos just talking about, listen, don't find those. You're not going to find those excuses from me. In summary, just up your game. Up your game. Look as far as you need to look in order to find that person for you. And she's definitely out there. You've got a lifetime to find her. So welcome to the world of being a man. Let's go.
Because single guys are not being tied down by responsibilities, they have a lot more time to explore their personal interests, whether that be travel or hobbies or sports or whatever they want to do. Because they're no longer, or because they aren't tied down to someone or responsibilities, they really have a lot of mobility and diversity in their life that married guys simply can't imagine. Yeah, it's like being a grown-up child. You can do anything that you want. I mean, it's like all your dreams come true. I remember being a little kid thinking, oh my gosh, I can't wait till I grow up so I can do all this cool stuff. And then I got married. What was I thinking? Why would I do that? Why would anyone do that? Come on, really, why would you do that? You're just taking all the fun away. You're giving it to some girl. Why would you do that? Really?
Yeah, that's some kind of grass is greener thing. When you're kind of in lockdown, right? And I said I was going to learn French and Spanish. I just didn't do it. There's this illusion of infinite time. I can do that. I definitely didn't get it done. He's in a marriage and he's kind of really busy with his kids and with his wife and whatever else his work. Yeah, if he was single, oh gosh, man, there's so many things I could do. Guess what? Most single guys are doing? Playing Fortnite, just chilling, watching TV, things of that sort. I'm not talking about everybody, but we're talking about this kind of grass is greener effect. But some of the time it's going to be absolutely right. Anyway, let's go forwards.
If you're a single guy, don't be jealous of your married counterparts. There is nothing there to be jealous of. You have a lot of opportunities, and I don't know why life has turned out the way it has for you, but it has. So rather than fighting it, just go with the flow. There are tons and tons of opportunities out there for you to have romantic relationships if you want them, but you don't need to get married to have fun. You don't need to get married to have a fulfilling life. You don't need to give up your freedom in order to be complete. Your life is complete as it is. You don't need to conform to some societal norm or some historical precedent in order to fit into this world. There's so much to explore and to enjoy. Don't give up your freedom. Don't do it. Maybe one day in the future, society will come to its senses and realize that men have a very valuable place and a very valuable role to play, and that women are not all that they're cracked up to be. They are not the do anything Swiss Army knife human being that they claim to be. Enjoy your life as it is. Don't allow your need or thought that you have to have a woman in your life ruin what's a perfectly good thing that you have going right now. You don't want to regret it. You don't want to come to a point where you say, God, everything was going so well, and then for some reason, I thought that I needed to have a woman in my life. Yeah, you don't. Like I've said in my past videos, happiness is subjective. It's something that you decide on. If you're living your life thinking that you need to conform to someone else's idea of what it should be, then you're going to be unhappy. If you find yourself single and living this life, look at it as an opportunity to be and do all the things that you've ever wanted to do. There's a lot of evidence out there that single guys are much happier, much healthier, and much richer than their married counterparts. So, yeah, enjoy it. Just take it as a gift, you know? For whatever reason, women are crazy these days, and they're not wanting to hook up or they're not wanting to have relationships with men. Hey, don't let it bug you, man. Just use it as a gift. See it as an opportunity for you to live a life that maybe you never even imagined. All right, you guys, that's all I got for you today. I hope you've enjoyed the video.
Just to finish off what he was saying right at the end there, yeah, of course, you don't have to be married. But I think what he's saying, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong in terms of your point of view. It's you're either single or you're married. Yeah, you don't have to be You don't have to be married necessarily. You don't have to be single necessarily. So if he's saying, yeah, just go out there and just play the field and date when you want to date. I think he did mention that a little bit, but I don't know if it was the emphasis of what he was saying. I just heard the isolation aspect of it again and again. Maybe that's just me. Maybe it's the title. Single men are happier. Um, what I'm also thinking is, as you get older, listen, you're never going to have this conversation if you're about 18, 19, 20 years old, maybe even you're 30 years old. I'm in my 40s, I'm still not there, I'm going to be honest with you. But as you get older, let's put it this way, your drives, I think we know what we're talking about, go down. That may well be one of the reasons. And I've also heard that after you have kids, your drives go down even further. It's not in my culture though. I'm from the Caribbean culture. You know what I mean? I think always our drives are ding 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 ding, or at 100% or near enough. I'm gonna be honest with you. You've got big families and all that. Um, anyway, so just think about this necessity for marriage. Of course, it's not necessary. It's kind of what you choose to do. And I think with all the information we have right now, you go into it with open eyes about especially in terms of finances, like you said, and assets. What would happen should that thing fail? And if you want to have a deeper dive on it, you may well want to look at your relationship and think, well, actually, it's likely to fail for this reason. And if you had to forecast the reason why, then maybe you would know advance and make a decision about whether that is the right move for you. But as men, we need to make that right move for us and not anybody else, and we shouldn't feel pressured or force down any route. But I don't think we do. So even if your partner is like a 10 out of 10 every single minute wanting to get married to you, and you just don't want to do it, guess what? She's not the woman for you, or you're not the man for her. But if you don't have the shoulders in order to kind of take the decision that you know you need to take, then guess who you got to blame? Guess who I'm going to say you would need to blame? And I don't believe for a second that this man or any man in that situation who knows he's being pressured into something doesn't do it with open eyes. I just don't believe it for a second. Let me know if you do. That he woke up one day like, I didn't really want this. Bullshit. Anyway, please like, subscribe, Dennis Stephen.